Hey everybody, it's Mina. So today I'm going to be doing a sew along, a step-by-step using Simplicity 8947. This is a really easy pattern, and it's cute and easy, and it's also a transition garment in my opinion. Getting ready for the cold weather here in Cleveland, so just thought I would make this. I'm going to make it out of a sweatshirt material or something like a sweatshirt, or a sweater type material, something warm, but it's something that I can wear as a dress, and I can dress it up with some boots. I went ahead and I already cut out all of my pattern pieces. So the view that I'm going to make it's a mix between two views. So I like the sleeves on view A, so I cut the sleeves for view A, but I don't like the bottom of view A, so I'm going with view D, the band. So I like the sleeves and I like the band on view D. So that's what I went ahead and cut out. So a word, just an FYI, a word to you all who are sewing this pattern. It's a sweatshirt, so it's oversized. So what I went ahead and did is I cut the pattern pieces out according to my hip measurement. They actually don't have the hip measurement. Oh, yes, they do. I'm sorry. They do have the hip measurement on here. So I went ahead and cut the whole pattern out according to my hip measurement. Now, and the reason why I did that is because, again, it's a sweatshirt. It's supposed to be oversized. So I am at a 40. My hips are a 45. So I went ahead and I cut a 46 through 48, which is an extra large. So again, it's going to be oversized fitting on me because, of course, my breast, well, I can't really say of course, but my breast certainly is not a 45, and my waist certainly is not a 45. So I want to make sure that when I cut this, that it's going to fit me in the hips. It's not going to fit me tight. So along with this pattern's ease and my hip measurements, is going to be I'm going to have some room in the hip area. So that's what I went ahead and did. I just cut the whole pattern out in extra large. I did not grade in between the pattern for the waist and the bust. All right, so again, I'm going to do a little sew along. So go ahead and I want to go ahead and get started. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with some pinning and step number 1. So step number 1, this is for dress A and D with right sides together. We're going to pin the front 1, 2, back 2 at the shoulder seams, matching notches, and we're going to go ahead and stitch. So I have my pieces 1 and 2 here. I got one piece facing right sides up, and I got the other piece. I'm going to put those right sides together, and I'm going to pin at the shoulder seams. And you can also, I know in the directions it does say that you can use an overlock stitch for this, overlock serger for this. Depending on how I feel when I get over there, I may do an overlock. Just all depends. I am gonna start off on my machine and just do a stitch right across. So go ahead and pin your front to back. And once I get finished pinning this, I am going to take it over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew the shoulder seams. So when you're sewing the shoulder seams, we always want to start at a high point and go down to the low point. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and start at the high shoulder and sew all the way down to, this is the shoulder point. Then I'm going to flip it over, start at this high shoulder point, and go high shoulder, and go all the way down to the shoulder point on the other side. All right, so I went ahead and I sewed my shoulder seams. Now I decided not to use the serger because I don't know if I mentioned, but I am using this is like a red sweater material. It's a knit, but it feels like a sweater, but it also has like a backing, this really nice backing that feels good up against the skin, and it's kind of thick. So in my experience of sewing inserting a thicker fabric. I don't want thick seams and I don't want that feel up against me. So I just decided to go ahead and press the seams flat. I think I like that feeling a little bit better. So, but of course, when you sew your shoulder seams, make sure you're using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so our next step says for dress A and D, step number 2, it says to pin sleeve number 4 to front and back armhole edges with center small dot at shoulder seam, matching notches, then stitch. Press seams towards the garment. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we are going to so here is our so here is, so I have this laid out. Here is our sleeve opening right here. And I normally like to say, and I have the garment facing right sides up, and I like to say that this area right here, it looks like a smile. That's how you know that you have it positioned right. So this is a smile right here. All right, so we're going to take one of our sleeve patterns, which is 4, and we are going to do right sides together. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make sure your notches are matching up. Make sure that you have, I guess these didn't have double notches, but so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half, and this middle point right here, you can snip it if you like. You can take that middle point and line it up with your shoulder points, and then go ahead and put your first pin there. And then we're going to match up your underarm seam, pin, and then we're going to pin in between. Sometimes I find it easier to just pin like this instead of matching up your notches, because sometimes when we are cutting our pattern out on the fabric, sometimes we don't cut our notches identical. So what I normally do is I start at the shoulder point and I pin there. I go to the underarm seam and I pin there, and then I pin in between. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pin this, and then go over and pin my other side, and then I'm going to sew the sleeve on. Then you may have you have a little area where you may have to do a little bit of stretching to fit. Okay, and a suggestion is pin, as I use a lot of pins when I sew. I pin to basically form a seam almost. And that's just by my personal preference that I like to do. Okay, so that seems good. I'm going to go over to my other side and do the exact same thing. Lay my garment out, right side's facing up. I'm going to go ahead and get that smile that I'm looking for. There's that smile. I'm going to take my other pattern piece, sleeve. I'm going to fold it in half, find that middle point, match that up with my shoulder point, and pin like I did the other side. Oops, and I am doing that wrong. We're supposed to be doing right sides together. So here, that middle point, and pin. And then I'm going to go to that underarm on my my left hand side, pin that, and then I'm going to pin in between these two pins. Okay, underarm seam. And then just pin in between these two pins. All right, so almost done. All right. So now, here's what we have. I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew my shoulders. It's not sew my shoulders, but I'm going to sew the sleeve onto the front and the back bodice. All right, so I went ahead and I finished sewing the sleeve on. So our next step, number 3, for view A, pin front to back at side seams, at side and underarm seams, stitch the underarm and side seams above the large dot, back stitch at large dot to reinforce the seam. All right, so and that's just simply, we're sewing from right sides together, the wrist area. We're going to match up our underarm seams. Make sure your seams are flat. We're going to butt those together, put a pin there, and then we are going to pin in between. So we're just sewing from the wrist to the underarm down to the hem of this dress. So I'm going to put a little pin at the hem. Then I'm going to pin in between these. Now this fabric, it's a real stable knit, so I really don't need a whole bunch of pins. So I'm just going to use that many pins. Maybe I should put one right here. And then we're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. All right, so we see our dress is coming together very well. Starting on the other side, starting at the wrist area. I'm going to go ahead and pin there. Next, I'm going to pin underarm. Make sure I'm going to butt those two seams up together. Make sure that they're even. Then I'm going to come on down to my hem and place a pin there. This pattern is like super easy to put together. Super easy, and I can't wait till I'm done so that I can show you all. So yeah, I only need a few pins. All right, so we're going to take this, I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew from the wrist area all the way down to the hem. All right, so our next step says to take our sleeve band, which is 5 in my case, and put the notch edges together and sew 5/8 of an inch all the way down. So I went ahead and I did that. And then our fold line is going to be in the midway. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to take that piece, we're going to fold it in half like this. And here's our sleeve band, matching the notches. All right. All right, so the next step after that says what we need to do for our sleeve, which in my case is 4, we need to gather the ends of our sleeve so that it can fit our sleeve band. All right, so what I did is I went ahead and I did 2 rows of basting stitches at the end of my sleeve. And basting stitches are just long stitches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ends, the bobbin ends, and I'm just going to pull those. So to get the basting stitch, what you're going to do is, this is the longest stitch length on your machine, and I did 2 rows. You'll see my 2 rows right there. And then I'm just going to gather the end of the sleeve until it's able to fit, the width of the sleeve band. All right, so I'm gonna go gather all the way around. So what I'm gonna do here is, so that these threads don't come apart, don't come out, I'm just gonna tie a knot on the other end. All right, so I'm gonna distribute my gathers evenly. All right, so that looks like it's good. So we sew right sides together. So what you can do is actually, since I already have this wrong size facing out, I'm just gonna stick my sleeve band inside, and we're gonna match the seams up. So I'm gonna match this up, this seam, I'm just gonna stuff this inside. Match the seams up here, and then I'm gonna pin. And see, this seam right here is pretty thick, so that's why, another reason why I'm not gonna serge. I may do a zigzag stick just to, I think I may go around that with the zigzag just so it's not thick, so we can just kind of close up all 3 of these layers. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin that. Match up these notches. Yeah, because this is like a really, once we put all these 3 layers together, this is kind of thick. So I may just do a zigzag to just kind of make that one whole seam, one seam together, instead of all 3, instead of you seeing all 3. And then I may take my serger and go around it, because I think, yeah, that's pretty thick. So I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. I went ahead and I did my 2 rows of basting stitches on my sleeve, and I'm going to tie one end so that as I'm basting, these don't come loose. If I can find the other one. All right, so let's go ahead and gather this sleeve. So again, I'm just going to take this and stuff it down in here, right sides together. And match these seams up. And then pin all the way around, matching up your notches. Make sure these gathers are distributed evenly. All right, so I'm gonna go over to my sewing machine and stitch all the way around. All right, so here's how my sleeves look. Cute. So I went ahead and I turned your right sides out, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take that basting stitch out so you can't see it on the right side. I think I sewed a little bit over 1/4 of an inch. So it's just the basting stitch, and I'll just, I can just actually pull that out. Yep, just pull it out, and it's gone. And I'll do that to the other side. Now the only two things we have left to do is, look at that, that's really cute. Sleeve is really cute. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to put the neckband on and the bottom band. All right, so since I was doing view A with the sleeves, but I wanted D, I wanted to use the band, we needed to cut 2 of the lower band on the fold. So the directions tell us for view D, for the band, with right sides together, stitch the side seams of the lower band. All right, so we're going to put these right sides together, matching up the notches. All right, so we're going to match these notches up, and we're going to pin. Oops. I'm going to do the other, pin the other end, matching these notches. And as the directions state, we are going to sew 5/8 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to fold it in half and press. Then I'm going to use some pins to keep this together, and then it says we're going to attach it to the end of our dress, and we're going to have to take this band, stretch it to fit the lower half, to fit the our dress. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and sew my band, the ends together, using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to fold it together, wrong sides together, give it a really good press, and then we're going to attach it to the bottom of the dress. All right, so here's the bottom of my dress, bottom of the dress, and here's my band. So we're going to sew these right sides together. Just going to take and sandwich my dress in between. Going to match up the seams. So here's the seam. I'm going to match my side seams up. Make sure that seam is flat. Match those up together. And I am going to pin. Then I'm going to come around and match my other side seam. Make sure that's open, and butt those two together, and then we're going to just pin in between. We're going to be pinning the band to the bottom of the skirt, matching your notches. The next step is to match the notches together. And then what you'll do is, looks like you can probably stretch between. Now, if you're working with a really stretchy fabric, this is kind of stretchy, so I wish that I probably would have cut the band a little bit shorter so that I could see that gather, because I wanted mine a little bit more gathered than that. So if you want to achieve that look, only thing you have to do is cut the band probably about 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches shorter than it is, and then stretch it around the bottom, and then you'll get more like a little gathered look. But this will do, because I'm sure this will come out really cute, even though it's not gathered. But we're going to pin all the way around, matching up those notches. And then I'm gonna take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna sew. And the same thing with this, we have 3 layers of fabric that we're sewing together, and that'll look kind of messy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and I'll probably serge this. This isn't as thick as the sleeves were, the sleeve band, because this was folded in half and then attached to that. So it's not as thick because we had some gathers in here, so that made that kind of bulky. But what I'll do with the arm is I'll zigzag stitch it, and then if it's thin enough, I'll go ahead and serge across it. But for the bottom, I think that I'm just going to go ahead and do a serge. Going to stitch it first and then finish the edges. And then the only thing we have left is to put the neckband on. All right, so now it's time for our neckband, to sew our neckband on. And it's the same thing as our band, our bottom band that we just did. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold these right sides together. I'm going to sew 5/8 of an inch down the center back. I'm going to fold it together, wrong sides together, press it really good, and then we're going to attach it to the neck, and then we'll be all done. Okay, so now I am ready to sew my neckband on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it like this, and I'm just going to put a pin right here on each side just to let me know that these are my shoulder seams. Match my shoulder seams up with that. And then in the front, we have notches to match up. So I'm going to take my center back seam here, match it up with the center back here, put a pin, come around to my shoulder seam, match and make sure that's flat, match that pin up with that shoulder seam. And then pin. Gonna come over to the other pin, match it up with the shoulder seam, and then I'm gonna pin. Then I'm gonna come around to my front and match up the notches. There. And then, so the front, we're going to have to do a little bit of easing. So I'm going to just stretch just a little bit and then hold it, put a pin there. And then what I'll do with the neck is I will be serging that. so that we don't have all three of those layers exposed. It'll look a little bit more professional if I serged it. All right, I'm gonna come around to the back and finish pinning. Okay, so this is my last pin. I'm gonna take it over to my sewing machine and sew all the way around. Let me put one last pin right here. Take it to my machine and sew it all the way around. And then we are done. Okay, so here is the neckband sewed on to the dress. Now, when I tried this dress on, I really wasn't feeling the neck. I really wasn't feeling this band around the neck, this mock turtleneck look. So what I ended up having to do is I had to make another trip to Joann's because I didn't have any more fabric. I thought that I would have enough fabric, but I had to make another trip to Joann's to get more fabric to cut out the hood. So the hood is what I was the look that I was going for. So I'm going to remove this band from the neck and I'm going to put the hood on this dress. Now, another thing that I did is once I tried it on, the dress just fit me. The dress at the bottom, it just went straight, and that was totally not the look that I was going for. I knew that I would probably have to make the band shorter because the look that I was going for was more of a bubble look, an oversized look. But when it came down to the hem, the bottom of the dress, I wanted it to be more of a bubble look, not to just go straight down and have just a straight shape. I wanted it to have that bubble shape at the bottom. So what I did is I had to remove this bottom band and I cut it. I just took 4 inches off total. I cut 2 inches from each side seam and a total of 4 inches, and reattached it, tried it on, and it fits perfect. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this band. Good thing that I didn't serge this yet. I'm going to remove this band and we are going to add the hood. All right, so now that I've taken off the band around the dress, around the neck, I went ahead and I cut my hood pattern out. And according to the directions, it tells us to cut 2 of a hood pattern and to place them right sides together and then sew all the way around. So I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And then our directions tell us to fold this over, fold the hem over, which was 1 inch on the fold line. I'm going to fold that over, I'm going to press it, and then to, excuse me, sew at 1/4 inch all the way around the face opening. Okay, so I have went ahead and I've sewn my my hood pieces together, the 2 pieces together. Now I opted out of doing the drawstring. I did want a drawstring. So again, what I did is I just simply folded over and just hemmed around the face area. The next thing that we need to do, the next and the last thing that we need to do is to attach the hood to our dress. And that just consists of right sides together. So I'm going to take my hood. I have 2 back notches back here that should match up with the back of my dress. And I'm going to take that and match those up first. And then right sides all the way around. And then after I'm done with this, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and sew at a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And one thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to deviate just a little bit away from what the pattern says. For my hoods, when I put a hood on, I like the look of the crisscross look in the front. So I'm going to kind of crisscross the hood. I'm going to crisscross the hood in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pin this on normal. And then go ahead to the other side. And then when I get to the front here, I want these to crisscross in the front right here. So here's my center front right here. So I'm just going to take that a little bit over, put a pin right there. And then there's just a little bit of easing that I'm going to have to do. This is a stretch fabric, so we're able to do that. Okay. Then I'm going to take the other piece, the other end, and then just crisscross it over here. Put a pin, and then just ease that little bit in. It's not much of a stretch, not much of an ease, I should say. Okay, and I'm just going to take this over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew it all together, and then I will be done. So that's the look that I like, that right there, that crisscross look. All right, so I'm gonna take it over to my sewing machine. I'll be right back. I'm gonna sew it up. I'll try it on, and you all will see the finished, my finished dress.